Welcome to another video from McFatter Tech Musser. If you like these videos, please click subscribe. Welcome to another lab in Network Support Services, Windows Networking. I will be hosting this lab in Hyper-V. You as the student will follow along, answering all questions and taking the appropriate screenshots as shown in your worksheet. So let's begin. 70-740 Lab 17, Implementing Network Load Balancing. That's our acronym NLB. In this exercise, we're going to be installing the Network Load Balancing feature. We'll create a NLB cluster. We're going to be looking at how we configure our DNS for it. We'll then be configuring cluster properties. We'll look at managing nodes, and then finally the steps required to remove an NLB cluster. We're going to be using our DC1, of course, that's where we're hosting our domain and our DNS, as well as our server 3 and server 4. That's LUN SVR3 and LUN SVR4. In our first exercise, we're going to install the network load balancing feature on those two servers. Network load balancing transparently distributes traffic across multiple servers by using virtual IP addresses and a share name. With NLB, you gain fault tolerance and enhanced performance. It's often used with mission-critical web servers, but can also be found on other types of servers. With that in mind, understand that the network load balancing is typically done for a front-end service, whereas our failover clustering typically is for a back-end service. Let's begin by getting access to our LUN SVR3. We'll go ahead and we're going to get logged in there. Now, in our previous exercises, we had installed failover clustering. Understand that if you're going to do network load balancing and you're going to repurpose a server that was previously used for failover clustering, you have to remove the failover cluster feature. You cannot have both features installed. You cannot have both load balancing and failover clustering installed. It has to be one feature or the other. So as soon as our server manager comes up, we're going to be going in and we're going to be adding that role. We are logged on. Let's just double check. We are logged on to SRv3. It's on our domain. We're going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features. We're going to click Next 4 times. Next, 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 and Next to get to our features. We're going to scroll down and we're going to look for the network load balancing. It's right there. We're going to select that, go Add Features. We'll click Next. And what we're going to do is on the install, we're going to go ahead, we're going to let that install. And then once our installation is complete, that'll be your first screenshot to paste into your worksheet for the exercise. You're going to paste that screenshot into step number 9, and as I said, that is once our installation is complete. And it should be done here in just a moment. So in this case, I'm not going to bother pausing our video because it should complete, and there it is. So get that screenshot, paste it into step number 9. Now we're going to do the same thing on SVR4, but do we need to log into SVR4? No, we don't. We can add that server, and I'm going to do that right here. We're going to click Find. We're going to select that. We're going to add it as a managed server. Now we can go back into Add Roles and Features. We're going to select Next, Next. We're going to select SVR4, click Next, Next. We're going to go down to that network load balancing feature. We're going to add the features to it, Next, and Install. As soon as our installation is done here, we'll have installed the network load balancing feature on both LUN SVR3 and LUN SVR4, and that'll complete our first exercise. We'll just wait a few moments for this to complete. Okay, that actually took about a minute, minute and a half, but I paused the video in between. We're done installing that feature on SVR4 right now. So we're going to continue doing our work from SVR3. That's why I said, you know what, why even log into SVR3? If I was doing this in a production environment, I wouldn't even be logged into SVR3. I would be on a jump box, a Windows 10 machine that I've got configured for all my administration consoles. If you don't have to log into servers, don't log into servers. We're going to go to Tools. We're going to go to Network Load Balancing Manager. We're going to open that up. It opens up pretty quick. It's right there. Let's go ahead. We're going to make that a little bit larger. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to right click on the name and select New Cluster. And in that wizard, we're going to type in lun-svr3 and we're going to tell it to connect. And we can see it asks us what interface do we want to connect with. We're going to use our London network. We're going to select Next. Let's answer our questions. Our first question is, what is the default priority? You can see it right there on your screen. The default priority is 1. What's the IP address? Answer question number 2. Well, its dedicated IP address is right there. It's 172.16.0.23. Now that you've gotten your second question answered, we're going to click Next. And now we're going to assign an IP address for the cluster. That cluster address is going to be 172.16.0.65. Our subnet mask, remember we're using a Class C subnet here. So we're going to type in 255.255.255.0 and click OK. There is our address. We're going to click Next. And now we want to assign an internet name for this. How we're going to be addressing this. And we're going to call it web.adatum.com. And let's answer our third question. And that is, what is the default cluster operation mode? What does it say right there? Unicast. It's your answer to question number 3. However, we are going to select multicast. Your answer is unicast, but now we're going to select multicast. Now that we have multicast selected, we'll click Next. And now we're at the new cluster port rules screen. Now, before we answer our fourth question, we have to click Edit. And now we can see our port rule that is in there by default. And our fourth question is, what is the filtering mode set to? You can see it right here. The mode is multiple host and single affinity. So there's your answer, multiple host and single affinity. We're going to click OK and accept that and click Finish. We now have our first server in the cluster. Once this has completed, and we can see that the configuration has begun and it has now changed, it is done, go ahead and take your screenshot and paste that into step number 14. What we're going to do now that you have that screenshot, we're going to right click on web.adatum.com and we're going to add host to cluster. And yes, we're going to add SVR4. We're going to click Connect. And we're going to select the London network interface. We need to make sure that our cluster is on the same subnet. Remember that from our lesson? Our network load balancing clusters have to reside on the same subnet. We're going to click Next. On our Add Host to Cluster, we're going to click Next. On our Add Host to Cluster port rules, we're going to click Finish. We now have our 2 hosts for network load balancing. We can see our SVR3 has converged. SVR4 is being added and our convergence is pending. We're just going to wait a little bit If it seems like it's taking too long, you can press F5 to refresh. And there, our network load balancing configuration has converged. We are good to go. Take a screenshot and paste this into step number 7. Our second exercise is already done. We have created a network load balancing cluster. Now in our third exercise, we're going to configure DNS resource records, and this will be used to access the network load balancing cluster. Remember, we assigned that 172.16.065, and you can see that right here. We gave it a name of web.adatum.com and that address. Well, we did that in the cluster, but we have not done that in DNS yet. When you create an NLB cluster, you define a virtual IP address that represents the cluster. For users to access the cluster via that virtual IP address, you must add a DNS entry for that virtual IP address. So we're going to jump over to our DC1 and get logged in on that. Should only take a few moments. Once our server manager is up and running, we're going to go to Tools, and then we're going to go to DNS. In fact, I've got a link to it down here in my toolbar. I don't even need to wait. There we are. We're going to go ahead and expand our forward lookup zone and select adatum.com. We're going to go ahead and we're going to right click and we're going to do a new host record. That host record is going to be web, and the IP address. Yep, same IP address that we assigned in the cluster, 165.16.0.65. You can see we've got the associated pointer records going to be created. That way we can do a reverse lookup on the name as well. We're going to click Add Host. It has been successfully created. We click OK. We can then click Done. We're going to now create a new CNAME, a new alias. That new alias is going to be www. And the fully qualified name will be web.adatum.com. And we're going to click OK. We've created our new A record, and we've created an alias to connect to that web.adatum.com. Take a screenshot and please paste this into step number 10 in your worksheet. We're done with doing our DNS configuration. Let's move on to configuring cluster properties. We're going to jump back over to SVR3. We're going to right click on web.adatum.com and we're going to choose cluster properties. And what we're going to do is we're going to select our third tab, which is port roles. Right now, it's responding to any TCP IP port, right? From 0 to 65.535. We're going to click Remove. And then we're going to select Add. Here again, which filtering mode? This is our fifth question. Which filtering mode is selected and which affinity is selected? Well, it's the same as what we saw before. It's multiple host and single affinity. Please answer question 5 with that response. Let's answer question number 6. And this goes back to our lesson. Why would you use single affinity? Here's your answer. A single cluster node handles all requests from a single client. This option is useful for stateful applications where the status of a process or transaction is maintained throughout the entire connection, including when using SSL and e-commerce shopping cart applications. So, to have a single cluster node handle all requests from a single client. There's your answer to question number 6. Let's change the protocol to TCP instead of both. And the port range is going to be port 80. Once we've done that, we're going to click OK. And we're going to add an additional rule, and that's going to be for 443 TCP to 443. And we're going to leave our single affinity multiple host, and we're going to click OK. Let's go ahead and take another screenshot showing our new rules and paste that into step number 10. So now we have restricted the responses for this cluster for web.adatum.com for that server to respond to only requests to port 80 and port 443. So if someone tries to contact this cluster and do a DNS request or an email request, any other request, it's simply going to drop the traffic. We've restricted the traffic to only our web traffic. We can go ahead and click OK. And we can see our convergence is reestablishing itself. It's going to take a few moments, and there it is. We're converging. In a few more moments, we should have convergence. I'm going to go ahead and click F5 just to see whether, and there it is. We've finished our fourth exercise. We're going to leave our console open, and we're going to move on to our fifth exercise, which is how we manage cluster nodes. In this exercise, we're going to stop one of the nodes and then bring that node back online. Let's say you need to do some maintenance. As an administrator, you can manually add or remove nodes from an NLB cluster by using the Network Load Balancing Manager. You can also suspend and resume a cluster node and perform a drain stop. When you remove a node, you can perform a stop or a drain stop action. Understand that the stop action immediately terminates all existing connections and stops that NLB service. The drain stop action blocks new connections to the node without terminating the existing sessions. So the existing sessions can complete and drain away as each one completes, while no new are established. You do your maintenance, you do whatever the required action is to that service, and then you would bring it back. So let's go ahead. We're going to right-click on our SVR3. And we're going to select Control Host, Drain Stop. So we just talked about what Drain Stop does. Let's answer our question 7 with that answer. What does Drain Stop do? Drain Stop blocks all new connections without terminating any existing connections. Make sure you've got that in for your 7th question. Go ahead and take a screenshot showing that our SVR3 is stopped while our SVR4 is still servicing the cluster, and paste that into step number 2 in this exercise. So take a look by clicking on web.adatum.com, and let's look at our host configurations. Question number 8, pretty obvious. What is the status of the LUN-SVR3 node? Well, the LUN-SVR3 node is stopped. There's your answer. It's that simple. Let's go ahead. We're going to right-click on SVR3, go down to Control Host, and we're going to select Start. It's pending. We'll be coming back up. We're just going to let this complete. It's enabled. We're converged. We're going to right-click on SVR3, and this time on Control Host, we're just going to click Stop, and it immediately stops it. See the difference? It didn't purge any existing connections. It just stopped. It killed any connection that was there. We're going to right-click, and we're going to go back to Control Host and go to Start. It starts pending. We're going to take a look back at our top-level view. It's converging. And we're converged. We're back in full operation. This is how you manage your network load balancing cluster. Remember that a network load balancing cluster can have as few as 2 nodes or as many as 32. So very scalable. Now we're going to go ahead And we're going to jump over to our SVR4 for this management. We're going to open it up and get logged in. We're going to go ahead and we're going to open up that same management cluster in Tools. And we'll go to Network Load Balancing Manager. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click on web.adatum.com and we're going to select Delete Cluster. Do we really want to do this? Yes, we do. Our configuration is changing. It's converging. It's removing. There's SVR4 has been removed. SVR3 is still there. Waiting for it to complete. And our cluster is gone. We're going to go ahead and we're going to close out our cluster manager. And just in the same way as we used our SVR3 to install the network load balancing feature on SVR4, we're going to use it to remove it. We can see that here on SVR3 with a quick F5 to refresh, our cluster is gone. We're going to go to Manage, Remove Roles and Features. Here again, we're going to click Next. We're going to select Server 3. Next, Next. We're on our features. We're going to scroll down. We're going to select Network Load Balancing. We're going to remove the administration tools. We click Next, and we click Remove. Should take a few moments for it to remove. And we're done, and we'll need to do a restart when we're done. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Close. I'm going to go back into Remove Roles and Features, and we're going to remove it from SVR4 as well. We'll click Next. We're going to scroll down to that feature. We uncheck it. We remove the remote administration tools. Next and remove. Should complete here in just a moment. There it is. We're going to click Close, and I'm going to do a command prompt, and I'm going to run it as administrator just to be sure. I'm going to type in shutdown, and I'm going to do a /m and then // lun-svr3 restart in 0 seconds. In other words, restart server 3 now. Okay, so I did server 3 by mistake. Okay, and my mistake. I meant to type in SVR4. So I want you to see that. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get logged back in, and we're going to do that. Oh, if I spell administrator correctly, it might be of value. Okay, so our server manager is coming back up, and we're going to run once more. And you know what? I'm going to cancel that. I'm just going to click Start and type CMD once more. And we'll do that admin command prompt. And this time we're going to type the command that I wanted to type. And this time it's going to be lun-svr4. Actually restart the machine that we want to restart as well. They both needed to be restarted, but I meant to do this one first. Should take a moment. You should get the command prompt to come back once it has accepted that response. It didn't like me doing that. Oh, remote shutdown may not be supported. Okay, well, it didn't like me doing that. Okay, so we'll just jump over to that SVR4 and we'll do the restart on that ourselves. Not sure why we got that error, but it's easy enough just to do this. And I think I typed in administrator incorrectly. Yes, I did. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, so it's as simple as clicking restart. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and that's going to restart, and once it's restarted, it'll be up and running. Our server 3 has also restarted. We've eliminated the roles from there. We've cleaned up our servers, and we're now ready to move on to our next lab, which will be Lab 18. I'd like to thank everybody for either taking part in your lab exercise and submitting your worksheet to Dropbox, or reviewing this exercise in 70-740 on network load balancing. And as I always say, I'll see you in the next lab or lesson. Remember, if you like these videos, please click subscribe. Have a great one.